This
Recorded.
conference will now be recorded.
So we have some great material for you today. If you have any questions during the presentations, feel free to chat them in. I'll try to work them into the speakers' presentations as best as I can. Sometimes the questions are the best part of the presentation. I do expect, unfortunately, that we may run a little long. We really have great material. We've had a couple rehearsal sessions with the speakers, and we've just got really good information. So without further delay, let's get into it and move forward with the presentation. So as I said, we've got 4 speakers. We've got Natasha with Advantix. She's Advantix Chief Revenue Officer. We have Rachel Fuller Almodovar. She is the Training and Organizational Development Coordinator with UC San Diego Library. And Rachel's got some tremendous information that she's going to share with us. And Charlie Yielding, Chief Executive Officer of G Squared Wireless, and Ben Jones, Founder and CEO of Mobile Resell. So with that, I just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of background. We started with the idea that some of the association members, and really Ben was the one that started with a statement, and the thought process was, gee, maybe ETMA should issue a statement or something. But you know, we're not a political organization, and I'm reminded when we had our first meetings, when I got involved with the association nearly a dozen years ago, we had all men at the conferences, and it was a little embarrassing, really, a dozen years ago that there were no women. And I'm pleased to report that now we have 2 women on our board, and you know, we have good representation in terms of women-owned businesses that are part of the association, and we've become a much more diverse organization, changing the organization's name, moving just from telecom expense management into technology management. But going back to this whole discussion, you know, since Memorial Day and the terrible situation with George Floyd, everybody's been kind of rethinking things. And where the association with the board got together and we started to discuss, you know, what sort of action should we take? And the thought was, you know, we need to do more than just issue a statement. So the thought was we should host a conference, a presentation where we encompass all the values of the association, which are peer learning, you know, sharing experiences and learning from each other. And that's the goal with today's presentation, is to provide that blueprint for our members and to take actionable items that you could take that other members have actually already implemented within their organization and put them into play within your organization to bring about change. So when the board got together, we started to talk about this, and we said, you know, what we need is to focus on 3 major areas: awareness, access, and action. From an awareness standpoint, again, we're not a political organization, but we can all agree that there's definitely a problem in terms of minority recruitment and minority representation, both within the organization and within the organization membership. And the thought was, we need to both build awareness of our industry and career opportunities within the minority communities. And we need to build access to increase the diversity of the talent pool. And then we need to take action. Members need to put programs into place to affect change and bring about change. So with that in mind, we thought, let's shape a presentation around recruiting to drive diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And with that, let me pass it on to our first speaker. So Natasha, take it away.
All right, great. Thanks, Joe. Joe, could you advance my slide? So many of you know who I am because, you know, we've attended the conferences. I'm also vice president on the board. And, you know, just on behalf of the board, I couldn't be happier to have the ability to bring this value to our membership and to take such a relevant and critical topic and provide hopefully what is a very safe space for us to share ideas. So as a starting point, you know, Joe talked about awareness, access, and action. So, you know, today we're going to talk, you know, about Again, what is diversity, inclusion, and belonging? So I'm going to give you some definitions around that. How do we provide access? And Rachel is going to provide real practical ways of thinking about that and real life strategies. And I would say on the spectrum of the companies that are thinking about it and starting to do something about it, and all the way to a company like Charlie and Ben. Charlie and his leadership, I think, really stay tuned on what he has to say, because these are folks that have been practicing this and invested in it, and they're actually seeing the fruits of their labor. So I think for many of us here, we're going to see a spectrum of where we are in this process of diversity and inclusion. So as a starting point, I'm just going to give you a couple of definitions. So, what is diversity? So it's a range of human differences. It includes, but is not limited to, race, ethnicity, gender identity, sexual orientation, age, class, religion. So that's when we say diversity, these are some of the more traditional, definitions. So what is inclusion then, right? A lot of talk about D&I, diversity and inclusion. So inclusion is now the involvement and the empowerment where the inherent worth and dignity of all people are recognized in that diverse spectrum. So an inclusive workplace promotes and sustains a sense of belonging. So, I'm sure a lot of you have heard a lot about diversity and inclusion recently, but belonging might be sort of a new word. And what the studies have shown is that, and this is a Harvard Business Review article, that as American corporations, we've missed the target. We have spent $8 billion on D&I initiatives, and 40% of the workforce says that they feel isolated at work. So you might ask, what is belonging? So that's the last piece of the puzzle, right? Well, I can't say last piece, but a critical piece that's being identified. And so belonging, and Rachel's going to talk a lot about this, is how do you bring your true selves to work and know that there is the psychological safety around you, starting from leadership all the way through the organization to support that. So it's the equivalent of saying, I'm going to invite you to the table, which is diversity and inclusion, but I'm going to amplify your voice. We're going to have a dinner conversation. We're going to engage, right? So that's belonging. And it's the most basic of all human attributes. We're pack animals. We need to belong. So that's really, really important. A couple of statistics for you guys. When workers feel like they belong, the companies reap also bottom line benefits. So 56% of employees via this HBR review showed increased job performance when they felt like they belong. 50% decrease in turnover risk, and 75% reduction in sick days. So, so those are some of the definitions to work with. I just put up something here about culture eats strategy for breakfast. You guys probably all remember this Peter Drucker. He kind of coined it, made it famous, right? But culture is important, and we've been talking about culture for a long time. Culture and strategy are two sides of the coin, right? Without culture, how can you really leverage your strategy? And if you think about it, how do we foster a great culture? Diversity, inclusion, and belonging is the cornerstone of that, of being very healthy from that perspective. And I don't see my slides anymore, but that's okay. The last piece I would say is be an ally. A lot of us here in this room today, and this is probably some new terminology, and Rachel, please, define ally when you can, but many of us in the room today are not part of an underrepresented group of individuals. But we can be an ally as leaders and as people that can recognize, again, the awareness that there's an issue. We can support and we can advocate and we can leverage our positions, to be able to create change. So I just, really encourage everybody today, wherever you're on the spectrum, at Advantix, I will humbly say that we are assessing our metrics. We are putting together programs for awareness. We're enabling the youth programs. We're getting those going, but we're on the spectrum of getting going, right? And I will humbly admit that we got work to do. But you look at some other folks like a Charlie who's going to talk about all of these intrinsic programs. And so, you're going to hear the whole spectrum, and Rachel's going to really set a foundation for us for some practical strategies. So with that, just a quick note on Rachel. She and I are actually personal friends. So we've known each other over 20 years. And she's, there's a lot of times where I go to Rachel and say, as my friend, what do you think about the situation? And always a wealth of knowledge, but mostly we collaborate over wine and cooking. But
Yes.
we could be happier to actually collaborate professionally for the first time. So with that, I give you Rachel Almodovar. It's all yours, Rachel.
Thank you so much, and thank you for this opportunity to address such a wonderful group and taking this step in response to what's been going on in our country as a whole. I am happy to say that I have been a human resources professional for over 15 years. I got my start in not-for-profit organizations in Sacramento and social service, and then moved into healthcare and hospitality very soon after that. And I really, really, really enjoy specifically the recruiting side of human resources, because I found that there are a few things that are more rewarding than connecting someone with a job where they feel valued, where they feel that they can make a contribution to an organization, where they feel that they are engaged in the work that they do, and that they're good at it. So I have spent my professional career creating those types of environments where that can thrive, because I that just makes me feel fantastic. It makes, I think, the people that I work with feel fantastic, and I've been able to see just the benefits that organizations reap from real engagement with their teams. I've worked in organizations that have typically been a little bit larger, so some of them are, few hundred people, 300 people, and up into the thousands. Currently working at UC San Diego, and we've got about 30,000 staff in that organization. So it's the largest that I've been in. But I had my start in some very small mom and pop places where sometimes recruiting is really a challenge, and just HR initiatives as a whole can really be a challenge. So I thought I would talk about 3 points here. If you wouldn't mind advancing my slide, I'll just give you 3 quick points to talk through and take away. The first one is really about leadership. Again, I have the experience of working with leaders and developing leadership training strategies. And a lot of the things that I think leaders sometimes tend to forget is, again, that human and emotional intelligence that is necessary to really make sure that you are connecting with your team. And this is critical in times of crisis. We are seeing crisis upon crisis. We, of course, have the horrible events that we all watched with George Floyd a few months ago that really affected a lot of us and sparked that desire to change what we're seeing in this country. But we also have the crisis of this of COVID and everything, the way that our organizations are changing and trying to adapt to that. So at these times of crisis, I think our staff, the team members, the critical people that we need to be able to move our business and our organizations forward, who we need at these times of crisis to be engaged and focused and creative and innovative and receptive to change. They need to feel from leadership that they are valued and that they are understood. Gallup has some really great resources, and they continuously track trends with employee engagement. So if you go to Gallup's website, you'll find information about COVID, you'll find information about leadership and values and how people are doing and how people are feeling. Now, some people may really enjoy working from home. Some people may find that this is a wonderful business opportunity for them and they're growing, and others may be really going through some difficult crises as they're trying to balance all of these new needs in their lives, while again kind of watching the impact of COVID on the country and also the impact of this racial unrest and police brutality that is really coming to light. So if you have people of color in your organization, you might want to check in. You might want to see how they're doing, because this is the opportunity to either strengthen that connection or to have them recognize that maybe I'm not important and maybe I'm not valued because no one has said anything about this to me. No one has reached out to me about this topic, and maybe they don't care. The real world is out there, and it really does have an impact. I've been in HR for a while, and I think the traditional philosophy was you work and you deal with your work life, and that is completely separate from your home life and the rest of the world, and never the twain shall meet. But that's not really the reality anymore. So it is important for us to recognize that and to reach out to our team and to recognize and see what we can do to help support them. Statements are important, but action is even more important. So taking an opportunity to assess your organization and your programs, and to, again, just check in with your staff to see how they're doing. With really small organizations, it's as easy as an individual one-on-one Zoom call to see how you're doing. Where are we doing well, and where are our opportunities? So those are the conversations you can have with your individual contributors in your organization, and to find out where they are. Don't expect that someone may be comfortable enough to really tell you how they're doing and how they're feeling under these types of stressful circumstances, because race and the impact, particularly of COVID, on particular communities is a sensitive subject. If you've been on Facebook in the last 5 years, you'll know that it is a hard subject to talk about for people to be receptive and to really listen. So non-judgmental listening, just that step alone can be a huge tool to build trust, so that you, again, can demonstrate, I'm a leader who was willing to think differently, to accept some new information. I don't necessarily have to agree with it, but I can recognize that this might be an experience that I haven't had and someone else has. Because, again, these types of crises affect people differently. So being sensitive to that. Also thinking about where the organization is and assessing that when it comes to diversity. Is this a tiny organization, a small business with 5 or 6 or 10 people, and you just haven't thought about that at all? It's perfectly an opportunity for you, a perfectly timely opportunity for you to think about where you would like to be in the next few years. What steps do you need to take? What metrics would you like to put in place? What goals do you have to, again, strengthen and to bring in women and other traditionally underrepresented groups into your organization? And again, bringing them in is important, but also making sure that once they're there, that incorporating those new ideas, incorporating those different strategies and different points of view effectively will strengthen your organization. I also have a link to an article from Scientific American that we'll make sure that we distribute out to everyone, that talks about how diversity makes us smarter, because we have to stretch ourselves in ways that we might not have done if we didn't have those different people in the room with us to make us think in things in a different way. So that's where innovation comes from, that's where creativity comes from, and that's where flexibility. And I think those are 3 things in business right now that I think every leader would appreciate to have on their team. But you don't get there without trust. And you don't get there without an environment where people, again, feel psychologically safe to be able to speak up and to share some of their different points of view and to have that be respected. So assessments there, asking some questions about what could your strategies be in the future. And then it's really about putting that into action and creating some access. There are many different types of organizations that can help you with your recruiting, diversifying your talent pool. So when I was a recruiter for about 6 or 7 years in hospitality, we would literally get stacks of requisitions, to 100 or 200 when it came to our busy time periods during the summertime. And we would say, I need these people yesterday. So what we did was we would make connections with local organizations, particularly our community colleges, some high schools, as well as our local colleges and universities, because those are the people that are coming right out of the door, and particularly at this time, that are looking for employment, that have the skill sets that we were looking for. So those were some of the first organizations that we reached out to. It went, particularly when looking for diversity and increase that pool, then you take a look at the organizations that you're teaming up with. Is there a professional organization, but that has a special focus? Maybe they are helping refugees with job placement. Maybe they are helping recent immigrants with job placement. Maybe they're helping veterans groups. Maybe they are recent MBA graduates, Black MBA graduates. There are organizations in all of those areas. Your urban league is going to be another resource that has several programs. And if you don't have the human resources within your organization to dedicate one person to recruit, oftentimes teaming up with these types of organizations almost serve in that place. They can recruit for you. Going to a job fair, going and speaking at a school or one of these organizations can get you a more diverse pipeline of people, so that when you are looking to fill those positions, you already know that you have some relationships built up, instead of just going to the one job posting on Indeed, or just posting it out to a very small group in your LinkedIn. Yes, I will be absolutely certain to share a list of some of these resources, so that you'll be able to look at. So just going through again some of the things, and again, I know this is national, so I would recommend urban leagues, African American sororities and fraternities, organizations supporting refugees and recent immigrants, organizations supporting veterans, Job Corps, services for foster youth, and then, of course, your local employment development departments. All of those areas are going to be looking for you because they have candidates, qualified candidates at a variety of different levels, from very, very basic entry level, people who are looking to train, all the way up again to MBA, to experienced staff that may be transitioning into a new industry or at a transition point in your career. So again, I'll make sure to list all of those out and get those resources out to you. So those are the things that I would suggest. Again, metrics are important. You do want to set a goal for your organization and be able to track that over time. Again, when organizations are that small, 15, 20, 25 people, it's really easy to tell. But as you start to grow and as you start to place yourself in those growth opportunities, it is important to think about, where will we like to be in 5 or 10 years, and what will our organization look like, and what value would that diverse group of people bring to my organization? Language, skill sets, different points of view, connections with new business opportunities, for sales and for growth. So keep that in mind as you think about your strategy. And those are my thoughts. And I think I've answered most of the questions. So I will pass it on to our next speaker, and they will be able to give you some fantastic examples of how they're making that work in their organizations. Thank you.
Perfect. Charlie, before you start, just a couple of quick things. This is Joe Basili. We will have resources out to everybody. So if you didn't sign in with an email, just be sure to send me an email. If you're not a member of the association, we did open this up to non-members. And if you have any questions, please chat them in. And at the end of this call, we'll open this up for a conversation with everybody that remains. So with that, we're going to pass it on to Charlie, and Charlie's got some great things that you're going to be able to really use as a blueprint and emulate. So Charlie, take it away.
Thanks, Joe. And Rachel, you hit on a large portion of the benefits of the programs that we've implemented. And so some of this is going to seem like we're a broken record, but it's I think it's more like a verification that it's an earnest thing that we're trying to approach here that benefits people and the company at the same time. So to start off with, I wanted to get into the philosophy of why we do what we do. So G Squared was founded in 2005 by two women, Heather Thomas and Diane McDaniel, who wanted to make a change in their lives. Before they started G Squared, they worked at a local wireless telecom in sales, and it was a very toxic environment. I think that they said that the most common phrase when sales are down, skirts are up. So you can imagine such an atrocious thing being very, very toxic for an environment for women, and you can translate that out into minorities as well. So what they decided to do after fighting against it and failing was to create their own environment. And so from day one, G Squared has been not only about a successful business, but successful employees. And so I feel like I've been personally impacted by their philosophy and have adopted it because in late 2000 or early 2009, they hired me as a help desk agent. I was in a really bad way. I didn't really have much in the way of like a future, so to speak. And they hired me and essentially gave me the tools and the leg room to stretch out and see what I could do. And 11 years later, I'm a CEO. I never would have imagined that was possible. In that growth, though, I got to experience the changes that come about. So growth is stress, growth is this, growth is that. And I'm in a place now where I never thought I would be, because somebody took the time to say, we want to offer you not just a job, but a future. And so that's why we come into this thing the way we do, and that's why we put so much time and effort into these things. And so a couple of concepts that I want to talk about before I get into the meat of it is the way we approach things. So we approach things in an equality of opportunity rather than a quality of outcome. So what we do and what we strive for is to include as many people as possible. And so a lot of the stuff that Rachel was talking about with regards to being inclusive, we have minority specific recruiting firms that we reach out to and get resumes from every time we need an employee, because we want a more diverse pool, which in the end helps us because we get the best employee we possibly can. And the other concept is aptitude versus interest. And so one of the local colleges here, Middle Tennessee State University, has done a lot of research in this. And what they found, specifically with middle school and high school minority children, or the youngins or whatnot, is that 90% of all the kids have an aptitude for technology, meaning, and that's not just entry level, that's like data science, it's high-end stuff, 10% interest. And so what we gathered from that is it's all about exposure. It's all about giving them the tool sets that they need to understand that this isn't something that's like a it's not a black box that you don't know what's going on inside. This is a really understandable thing, and it's a really approachable thing once you understand that it can be done. And so knowing that, or understanding that in the way that we do, we decided to put some effort into it. And I'll get more into that later, but we put, like early on, we put a lot of time and effort into this. And so there is an investment in becoming, or trying to become, more diverse and more inclusive. And there's also another side to that, in that, like, I like to think that coming from a low socioeconomic status and working my way up, that I've got a good idea of what that perspective looks like. But what I don't have being a white male, is the perspective of what that looks like for a black female, or for a white female, or for anybody else that's not me. And early on, and this is the nobody's perfect thing, I took a lot of things for granted from regards of perspective. Like I try to be an active listener. I try to listen and take that and then turn it into actionable items that can be productive. But then at the same time, I'm constantly making assumptions based off of my perspective that don't adhere or stick with everybody else. Did we just lose Ben? Anyways, so in that, if you're going to be inclusive, you're going to have to listen, and you're going to have to interpret that from their perspective. It's like the whole like walk a mile in somebody else's shoes thing. You've got to do that. Otherwise, you're just going to put something out there that's not going to feel right to other people because it's just what you think it should be. And that's not something that works. So that's where we are from a philosophy perspective, and why we got into doing what we do. And so the programs that we implemented were intended to allow us to hire from a more diverse pool of people. So when I started in the late aughts, we had to have a degree, and we had to have experience in mobility. And most of the experience was just, retail sales or something like that. Like nobody knew what a BES was when they started, but we did the small amounts of training. And then if you can think about it, like when we were a smaller company, because we were just 15 to 20 people then, like everybody had gaps. So it was like everybody was a slice of Swiss cheese. And we were all put together, we had a complete knowledge, but it was like not everybody knew everything. And so as we grew, scale sucks and you wind up breaking a lot of things. We found these gaps, and we decided that training was the best way to approach it, but not just training for mobility's sake, but training in a complete fashion that allows us to bring in the best employees, regardless of experience, regardless of education. All we needed was intelligence and drive. And so our interviews were built to find out if the employees were or fit those criteria, rather than what do you know about mobility, or what's your degree in. Like I have a degree, but it's in psychology. So with regards to what I'm doing right now, it's worth 0. So in that same vein, like we're trying to bring in, like I said, the best people. And over the years, we've had to learn from mistakes, learn from, it's all trial and error. But we've got a program now where I can bring in any employee that wants to grow. And then I can give them the tool sets, or I can give them the tools and the skills to grow, because we train every employee. It's 16 weeks total, but it's in and out of like practical learning. There's a mix between practical learning and like classroom learning or applied learning, whatever you want to call it. And so when they're done, they have things that they can put on their resume that make them a more valuable employee wherever they go. So our job is to be more inclusive, but it's also to give skill sets to the employees, because we're dealing with entry-level folks here, skill sets to entry-level employees that allow them to be more than they were before from a work perspective. And so that breeds loyalty and motivation and all kinds of different things. And so we've taken it a step further. And so we've got the entry-level training, and then once an employee meets certain criteria, then they're eligible for management training. So for those of you who know me and have talked to me before, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but every single employee at G Squared started at the bottom and has worked their way up to where they're at. So I'm the CEO. I was a help desk agent. The president of our company was a help desk agent. The COO of our company was a procurement agent. And we have built the skill sets in a way where it's repeatable and scalable. It's slower scale, but it's still scalable. And when a new employee starts, they get that story, because everybody in the company has a story and the ability to articulate it. And that again drives motivation. And so like that, I won't go any further into that because we've got a small amount of time left. But the point of that is that we can train somebody from scratch. And so what we do on top of that is something that Rachel was talking about. We have 6 total resources, 3 normal, well, word of mouth is 1, and then we've got 3 websites that we use that are just like, Indeed and stuff like that. But then we have 3 specific recruiting firms that we go to that specifically work with diverse groups or minority groups. So one is blackjobs.com. Another specifically has to do with women and all that kind of stuff. And we can provide those links as well. And the intent, like I said earlier, is to increase the pool of people that we're drawing from in order to create a more diverse workforce. So and again, to Rachel's point, and so having a more diverse workforce does increase flexibility because you're constantly being challenged to grow what you think about your environment. And so the way that we see that applied is not only are employees growing themselves, like, growing their skill sets and things like that, but they're also growing their perspective or their ability to get into other people's perspective. I guess that's the best way to put it, because we're a very open company. Like I personally am an open book. You can ask me any question you want and I'll tell you. And that's the culture that we try to make pervasive. Like everybody is approachable and everybody is in this together so we can grow together. And then if, hang on, I've lost my train of thought. So we're bringing people to see it the flexibility. So you're not only being challenged on one area, but 2, because you're having to take other people's perspectives in to work with that, to build something together. And you're already dealing with stress, and then you're seeing somebody else who sees life differently from you dealing with stress, and it creates a more harmonious group, if that makes sense. And so that's the type of thing we approach with the recruitment. And that's what I consider workforce training or retraining, depending on if it's a youngin or if it's like a truck driver that's been on the road for 20 years, they can come work for us. Like I work with people who've got white beards down to here working on mobile devices. And then I've got people that are fresh out of high school working on mobile devices, and we're all working together. And we're all working towards the same goal. So there are other places in Nashville that I also work with, but we don't require their talent. But from a workforce retraining perspective, I implore everybody here to try and find local resources that take employee or that do their own training. So we've got one here called the Nashville Software School, and then another one that trains in data science. And they'll take an employee who has 0 experience, and they're essentially recruiting firms that have the training up front. And they'll train on, like data science is big in Nashville because of healthcare, and programming and development is big everywhere you go because it's just a huge job market right now. And they will train them up and they'll recruit them out, and then effectively change that person's career path, because they're willing to put the effort in front, because both of those companies put a lot of time and effort in qualifying the employee. And then once they qualify the employee, they train the employee. And that's the same approach we take, because they know when the employee gets out of there, their value is going to be higher and they're going to be better employees because they've got that experience where they didn't have, and more often than not, where they didn't have the same value. Like they weren't making the same amount of money because they didn't have specific skill sets that were applicable to like today's job market. And so that's all I'm going to say about workforce retraining. The second piece, and this is on the next slide, is has to do more with the aptitude and interest. And so we work with a couple of different organizations in Nashville that bring young folks to the office. One is a summer camp where the kids will come and spend a whole day with us, and they'll sit with individual employees and have the conversations. And these are inner city kids, with very low socioeconomic status. These are charity driven groups. And so they'll bring them in, and then, like I said, they'll sit with an employee, and then we'll all huddle up at the end of the day, and we'll talk about the experiences. We'll share our backgrounds, and this goes back to where every employee at G Squared has a story and can articulate it, because we have to be able to articulate it, because when people first experience that first bit of stress or anxiety when it comes to change, they want to quit. But when they find out that everybody else has gone through it, then they're more likely to stick it out. And so what we're trying to give them is that the experience we're trying to give them is that not everybody makes it to this point in an easy fashion. Because like when I was young, I thought that, people that made $100,000 a year were the smartest, and it was easy to them, and there was just a total misconception of what life actually is. And so what we're trying to give these youngins is the fact that like you can work to become whatever it is that you want, but also, you hear the like pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of statement. That's true, but from their perspective, it's extremely difficult. Because like climbing the corporate ladder for them is difficult because they can't see the first few rungs because they don't know what they're looking at. It's the same way for me. I didn't know what I was looking at until I was already on it, and then I had to figure it out. So my intent and G Squared's intent is to make it as easy as possible and as understandable as possible for these young kids to be able to grow into who they want to be rather than what their environment makes of them. And so the other one we do is a similar thing. We set up stations throughout the entire office, and the inner city kids come in, they talk to employees, they share what they do and how they do it, how they got to where they were, and then at the end of the day we do a huddle up too. And so the slide here is the summer camp group. Like all these kids came in. We've been doing this for a couple of years now. Obviously this year we weren't able to do it, but they come in, they go through a day with us and then a couple other companies, and at the end of the week they get an iPad and access to a few applications that help them get into like software and programming and stuff. And so I feel like this is an investment not only in these kids but in us as well, because I'm looking forward to the day where we get our first applicant from one of these groups, and it's going to be a special day. So I'm looking forward to it. And then so lastly, this kind of ties into a lot of what Rachel was talking about too, is like why, from a business perspective, a purely like financial business perspective, why do this? And so for us, we find a lot of value in it because when we empower employees, the employees empower us. And that sounds all cliche and stuff like that, but what that really turns into is an employee, like the average tenure on our help desk is 4.5 years for a help desk. And that's nothing, like nobody that's managed a help desk has even come close to those numbers. We have a less than 5% attrition rate. Like that's really, really good for what it is that we do. It's really good anyways, but for what we do, like I've seen help desks with a 500% attrition rate because they churn them and burn them. They set them down in front of a computer. They have to raise their hand to go to the bathroom. They're micromanaged like crazy. And then, but they have no idea what's going on. They're just coming in, doing a set of work and making money and then going home. Whereas they come to work for us, we push them to grow. And if you don't want to grow, that's fine, but we push for growth. So we have a lot of people who are problem solvers or innovators, in their own right. So a help desk agent will, is sitting on 4 years of experience. They're more likely to recognize and understand a resolution to a new problem than a new employee is. Therefore, our quality is higher. Our interactions are faster, and we get more done with less people. So we save money. Also, with the retention, we don't lose as many people, and so we don't spend as much on training as we would otherwise, even though we train from scratch. It's just the initial getting going that matters, or that costs. But once you're going, your employees feel a different way when they know that your interest is them. Like, because I'll tell anybody, I've gone to clients before in a sales meeting and said, and they say, well, we want to be your number one priority. And I was like, no, our number one priority is our customers, our employees. And you'll see the benefit of that because our employees will sort you out better than other folks, or than if we had a different type of mindset, because they know that we've got their back. They know that they have the room to innovate. And I mean innovate on a small scale. A lot of people think innovation is like the next big invention that changes the world, but we think about innovation as like thousands of small things that work to improve something. And then when you've built them all up, it is huge. And I feel that way about what it is that we do. And so that's pretty much the crux of it. Like our culture, again, to what Rachel was saying, is a big part of how we get our job done. And if our employees don't feel included, if they don't feel like their voice is being heard, then they're not going to perform. And so we have to, like the day after the Floyd incident, we reached out to all of our Black employees and just said, hey, if you need us, we're here. If you want to talk, we're here. We didn't reach out and say, hey, what should we do to make this better for you? Or what can we, or tell us what to do, essentially. Like, we didn't do that. All we did was show them that we care. And then we take we do the actions that also show them that we care. And so every employee knows that we do this kind of stuff. They know we're inclusive. Not everybody agrees. Not everybody's on the same line with regards to philosophy, but everybody can work together because we're all in it together. And that, to me, that's what inclusion is. And that's all I got.
Fantastic. Again, if you've got questions, please chat them in, and we will open it up to discussion at the end. And we will have resources going out to everybody after today.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, my name's Ben. I think I know a good majority of you on the call. Yeah, it's really been great to hear, from leaders such as Natasha, Rachel, and Charlie, who again really embraced inclusion and diversity in their organizations. It's something that I really wanted to focus on when I started the company 6 years ago, and I think we've done a good job. 5 out of our 15 folks on our team are actually ethnic minorities. Really, that includes folks that are Indian, Pakistani, Mexican, and Filipino, and then 3 out of the 15 are women. So we have a small team. We have 15 folks on the team, but over half would come from what you would consider minorities in the tech world. So definitely thankful for where we are in diversity today, but also kind of fully aware that there's a lot of work to be done as our team grows, and really don't want to lose sight of that. So yeah, I think generating interest at an early age. I'm going to talk really specifically like how can we help different minorities get interested in the tech field at an early age. I think Charlie's comment is super interesting regarding the 90% aptitude and 10% interest. Just within that data set, you can realize there's a huge problem, and if you start picking away at the layers, you kind of see where that comes from. But as you guys probably have read over the last couple of years, there's large tech companies, such as like Amazon, Google, and Facebook that are investing in projects like Facebook's Tech Prep, also Amazon's AWS Educate, which really on a high level are both meant to introduce computer programming to under-resourced children. These resources and these initiatives are great, but again, when you start peeling away the layers, you kind of quickly uncover what the nucleus is driving that interest, and the education and career paths, and really that's Wi-Fi and the connected device. That obviously is very relatable to all of us since we're in the mobility space. But many of these tech-backed career programs are targeted towards, middle school, high school, and college students. And you take a step back and you ask yourself, why not start earlier? Why is there only if 90%, of minorities and pick any specific minority group, and you really only come out with 10% interest. Why is that? Why not start educating children at a younger age, giving them the resources to become educated, to really kind of grow and understand what they want, or start helping them understand what they want to do, later on in life. So really, smartphones, tablets, and laptops play a crucial role in that. Connected devices are essential in really STEM learning. And unfortunately, a lot of minority children are disproportionately affected by not having that equipment that they need. Really, just take a look into those programs, kind of what I was mentioning earlier by Amazon and Facebook. Both are great, but you'll find a major gap for children who don't have access to Wi-Fi, a tablet, or even a laptop. I was doing some research and found it pretty interesting. I was looking at the National Center for Education, and some of these statistics were pretty staggering. 14% of children ages 3 through 18 don't have access to internet at home. And about 42% of the children's parents either can't afford Wi-Fi, don't have a connected device, again, such as a laptop or tablet, or don't have internet connection in the area. So that really equates to about 4 million children who don't have access to a tech career introduction program similar to Facebook's Tech Prep or Amazon's AWS Educate. And on average, minority groups represent about 50 to 66% of children that don't have Wi-Fi connectivity or a device. So you can see where that gap is, and why that 10% is a real number that we need to try to solve. And action, really, everything boils down to action. We all see these statistics on a daily basis. Again, thinking about these things are great, but really taking action at the end of the day. And I think the speakers that have been on the call are really highlighting good examples of action that's been taken. You may ask, how can my company help bridge that digital divide facing minority and under-resourced children? I'll provide an example of what mobile resale is doing today. At the beginning of our year, our team had a discussion on how we could make an impact, not only in our community, but in our customers' community. So we started talking to our customers, and as many of you guys know, we do software-driven device recovery and recycling. And obviously, knowing that there's a huge gap in getting technology in the hands of students, we started talking to our customers, hey, what if we started taking part of your device refreshes that you're working on and start allocating those devices to certain programs in your community that are, helping students achieve their goals, become interested in career paths that may inevitably, leads children to become interested in the industries that our customers are in. So, given the industry again that we're in, we offer our customers to kind of securely recover their devices, data wipe them, sanitize them, obviously given the COVID situation, and then donate those devices to a nonprofit, all at basically no cost. It's a really unique opportunity that we wanted to tackle, just because a lot of these businesses have already written off these assets, and donating hardware is something that is easy, and they don't have to allocate additional capital to those charitable efforts. So you guys will see here in a slide in a moment what that looks like. But really, it's applicable to both small businesses all the way up to enterprise. Whether your guys' customers have 50 devices or they have 100,000 devices, there's definitely an opportunity for them to make an impact where they may have not, previously thought about that in the past. So it's really, outside of this specific opportunity, it's really our responsibility as leaders of these organizations to make not only our internal teams but our customers aware of different options to help create change. Specifically for us, how we looked at it is there's a great way to donate devices that may end up in the secondary market, or may end up getting thrown in the landfill if not properly disposed. So we thought we would tackle that and it was an environmentally friendly way to kind of promote the circular economy and give back to those communities. So I really think at the end of the day, it's kind of objectives turn into goals. Making a difference can really come in a variety of different forms. As you've heard from Natasha, Rachel, and Charlie, each company is doing a variety of things to give back to their communities. But as you see in our example, we partnered with American Airlines. We did a large refresh of iPads for their pilot group, and we went to their head captain and asked, hey, we have this idea. What are your thoughts? And I guess to my surprise, he came back and said, yeah, we actually have been talking about that ourselves. What can we do? So we ended up partnering with a group called Aerospace Center for Excellence, called ACE. And what this group does specifically is it gives underprivileged kids, which includes a large minority group, it gives them access to technology to help basically promote and gain their interest within the aviation space. I'm sure a lot of you have heard on the news there's a huge shortage of pilots and also mechanics. And also, given the downturn in the economy and layoffs that are facing the aviation industry, it's even more relevant today because of, there's less interest in that field, and there's also quite a bit of furloughs and retirements happening at the moment. So we partnered with them. We donated about 300 iPads to their organization, and those iPads will be used for kids for different programs that helps get them interested in the aviation space. So just, again, one small example of what we're doing, but kind of the point here is to get creative. Start having the conversation with your team and your customers. Lay out a plan to kind of create change and have obtainable objectives that kind of lead all parties to their goals, whether it's your team and what your team would like to tackle, and then also your customers. But yeah, that's at the end of the day, I think there's plenty of opportunities in the place that we all play in the mobility space for us to make an impact. Not only in driving inclusion in our hiring processes, but also to work with our customers, understand their challenges, and how those challenges, how we can help solve those, and really kind of, again, solve some of these challenges that they're facing, and getting technology in the hands of students and trying to get them interested in tech career. So that's all I have today, but I appreciate it. And if anyone has questions, if you're working with another recycling partner and have questions on how that could work, definitely reach out. I suggest reaching out to your partner and seeing how you could potentially donate some devices that you may be working with them on. See how you can get back to your customers. And again, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me and can help you kind of go down that path.
So we have a question. We have a question here. We'll start with Rachel maybe to answer it, and then maybe go around the room if anybody else wants to add to it.
Yeah. So the question was, how do you get these initiatives started?
Well, it's actually a two-part question too,
yeah.
Rachel. So, and I think you got it right. It's really appropriate because I think a lot of people on this call are thinking the same way about the start, but also how to talk about these initiatives too.
Absolutely, absolutely. You're right, because there is, let's say there is a little bit of anxiety around bringing up these types of topics at work. You don't want to divide your team. You don't want to have people feel that that they also can't express their full selves at work. So I think framing it is really important, and understanding it yourself. So if these are new concepts to you, then I would recommend starting here, just researching the benefits of these types of initiatives for businesses, small and large, because we have some fantastic examples that were explained here about how it has an impact on your retention, how it has an impact on your customer service, how it has an impact on your sales, how it helps build and develop the communities that you work with, to be able to create greater partnerships and opportunities there. So if you start with the what do I know and why is this important to me as a business, you can start to build a bit of desire around it. It is important, though, to learn a little bit about some of the basic definitions. So there are many, many, many guides, and I'll put in a plug for UC San Diego. We actually have 2 links for some of just the basic vocabulary to define what an ally is, to talk about what these initiatives can actually provide you as an organization. And then having some conversations, opening the door to conversations within your organization about what do you know about this and what interests do you have in pursuing some goals. And maybe your first start is just, we're going to start to collect some information and educate ourselves about why diversity is important, why inclusion is important, and what we can gain as a business and an organization if we take these steps. So if you have the why, then you can start to figure out exactly where you are and where to build on from there. Maybe you do want to start with the recruitment opportunity. Maybe you've got a great pool of candidates, but for some reason they're not progressing forward within your organization. And maybe then you want to go back and talk about building in training programs and retention programs within your organization so people don't hit a ceiling once they've actually been in your organization, that they have some opportunity for growth. So each individual assessment. Now, there's some great ways to do those types of assessments. Again, just with some pulse checks. Gallup has some surveys, but also SurveyMonkey, because I'm in a state organization, so we always like stuff that's cheap and free. So SurveyMonkey has some great free surveys that you might be able to use. You might be able to reach out to some associates to be able to do some individual one-on-one interviews as well with your candidates, so that they're not talking to someone directly in the organization, they're talking with someone outside, and then they collect that information and then give them back to you. But asking your staff, what would you like to see? Where would you like these types of initiatives to go? Do we want to talk about, foster youth and getting them connected with our organization? Do we want to talk about, groups that have been traditionally underrepresented in the country in leadership positions in our organization, and trying to build that in? That framing it that way, and framing it in a way as this is a benefit. Not just, we're not talking about quotas. We're not talking about any type of kind of an exchange, a trade-off where you're losing value to gain diversity. It is an add. It is a complete benefit to the organization, but it does take some time, some education, and some investment to do it, just like any other initiative that you might have in your organization. So basic education, so you understand some of the verbiage and some of the benefits of the organization, and some basic assessment within your leadership first, and to make sure that they are on board with pursuing that, and then asking your team, what would you like us to do? Bringing these types of examples, as well as if on LinkedIn, I'm getting lots and lots of resources about different conversations that organizations are having with their staff around diversity and inclusion and what we can do. And those can be good starting points, as well as a couple of links that I've included in our resources. Could be a good conversation starter to say, where would you like us to be in 2 years, and 5 years, in 10 years with diversity initiatives in the organization.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing to that. So I agree with Rachel 100%. It starts with buy-in from leadership. The only thing that I'll add to that is that it's not just approval to do a thing. Is as a leader you have to embody the thing, and that means a lot of self-reflection. It means a lot of just like, this hurts to think about. It hurts to think that, like, it goes back to the implicit bias notion, is that like there's a lot of things that we do that we just don't think about, and then when it's brought up we're just like, whoa, that's not me, that's not me, but it might be, and you have to be open to those ideas. Otherwise you're just going to be a difficult person to deal with, and you're going to stymie the progress of the whole thing. So if you're an executive on this call, you have to be the change. And if you're somebody who has to work with the executives, then you have to it's definitely a more sensitive approach, but you have to get their buy-in, and you have to get their participation, and at some point you've got to introduce the concepts that are just not easy to swallow. And then when you get to those, you can't give up. You've got to keep on, but you got to be sensitive about it, because a lot of people, myself included, when somebody tells me that I'm wrong or bad about something, then my initial reaction is just like, no, not me. I don't have any issues with that. But then when you point out the specific actions, you're like, okay, well, maybe I wasn't. And this goes back to what I was talking about earlier. Like, I didn't always think from other people's perspectives because I didn't have that perspective. And so, another add-on to that is like, be open-minded and actively listen, and try to think about how other people are impacted from their perspective, not just your own.
Rachel, you also brought up in one of our practice sessions this notion that a lot of the people coming out of college are specifically looking for that sort of statement and that commitment. Could you talk to that a little bit?
Make sure I'm off mute. There we are. Okay, absolutely. I've been 2 years at UC San Diego, so I had been over, let's see, 10 years in hospitality and about 4 years in healthcare. So this was a little bit different for me. We definitely dealt with, students that had been coming into an organization. This was their first job. But I have to say, working in a university, the environment here is driving, and it might be a little bit different because I'm in California, but it is really driving. The expectation of students is that they are going to join an organization that aligns with their values and their beliefs, not just an organization where they join and they get a paycheck. So that is, I think, a generational shift that has happened. I think people of my generation, it's like, if I get to do the work that I love and, I'm making a difference in the world, that's like the extra cherry on top. But my main focus has always been, a career pursuit that is more of a financial benefit. And I think that has shifted completely. People really, really want to be a part of an organization. The youth in particular really want to be a part of an organization that allows them to be their full selves in all of the various ways that they express themselves, and to be able to integrate that. And they've been learning that since elementary school, that they are going to collaborate with each other, that their voice is expected to be heard and acknowledged, and that they're going to contribute actively. And so they've been practicing that, with all of their projects, with their works, with their teams. And this is something that, Google is tracking with a program called Project Aristotle, about how teams work together, how sometimes they get a little stuck, but how the best teams work together. So that collaborative contribution is a shift in this generation. So they are looking for inclusive organizations that speak up and that take action on their values and live their values and their beliefs, whether that be climate change, whether that be social and economic issues. Those are going to be attractors for organizations and ones that are interested in, like the examples that we've seen here, that are developing people to grow within an organization, not just come in, check, punch in, and punch out and get a paycheck. Does that answer that question?
I think it does. Just as we wrap everything up, do any of our speakers have any final comments or things that you want to bring up?
I think
Joe,
on that.
go ahead, Ben.
I think that to what you were just mentioning, Rachel, I know Charlie and I had this conversation early, right after George Floyd's death, when I had our team sit down, our entire team on a call. And again, we have 15 people, but we had a difficult conversation, like just bringing it up, what people thought about what was going on, what people thought, again, on the entire situation. And we have an open dialogue regarding, just because we have such a diverse team, what biases have people faced in the past. And people were really opening up about stories and challenges that they've faced, not only in the workplace, but just in life in general. It ended up being about a 2.5-hour conversation.
Wow.
And we had a lot of good feedback at the end, saying that, this was great. People loved their voices being heard. And I think Rachel made the comment yesterday, and it was really kind of hit home for me. Basically, if you can have those type of conversations with your organization, and I completely understand that the larger you get, the more complicated that gets. But if you can have those conversations, you literally can have any conversations, because not everyone's always going to agree, not everyone's always going to be on the same page. But as long as you listen and you put yourself in their shoes, which is what happened during that 2.5-hour conversation, you're definitely going to get good feedback. So it was, I can say from personal experience, it was good.
Yes, thank you. Yes, those skills are the types of skills that you want in your organization, for people to be able to agree and disagree respectfully and still be able to work together. There's nothing you can't do. There's nothing the team can't accomplish, because they have that psychological safety, and they'll be able to be creative, flexible, innovate, and be able to bring you better overall results. So again, that kind of goes back to why diversity is going to be good for you. And that can help with some of your leadership to grasp onto, why do we make this investment, and making that real for them. So thank you. That's everything that I had to say.
Well, this was fantastic. Just as we wrap this up, I think this is the start, obviously, of an ongoing conversation. It's not the end of the conversation. It's just the very beginning. I want to thank each of our speakers. You were fabulous. I'm sorry I couldn't spend more time introducing you, each individually, and all of your great credentials, but I knew we were going to run a little bit long. And we will send out resources to everybody after today's call. So look for the resources and some of the ideas. And thank you very much. We'll wrap it up now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Stay healthy.
Have a great day.
Thanks.
Great job, everyone.
Yeah,
Thank you
for sure.
coming, for the opportunity.